Hey, do you like change? I guess that would be contextual, right? What am I asking you to change? What's the context of the question that surrounds change?
No, I just want to be a hobbit and live in my shire and be left alone.
Yeah. No, that's for real.
Yeah.
Now, there's a quote we got right off the bat here from oak.com. Says, we will also have encountered varying levels of change, resistance, or have felt uncomfortable at the prospect ourselves. Implementing change is a skill in and of itself, and one that requires dedication and a lot of patience. As vital as change is to evolution and growth in every industry, it's no secret that the majority of these projects crash and burn, 70% to be exact.
Yeah, so when navigating change in a corporation, project, organization, about 70% don't go through.
Yeah.
Because people haven't learned how to navigate or respond to those and how they're feeling about that change.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because change comes in kind of 2 or 3 different ways. I mean, you've got personal, sometimes change just happens to you. You lose a loved one, or, a company you're working for tanks, and that's a big change for you.
Yep.
There's nothing really you can do about it. You just have to power through it, or hopefully learn how to navigate before those kinds of things might happen. But then there's kind of the professional setting where sometimes we as leaders are responsible for the implementation of change.
We are.
So not only do we have to be okay with it ourselves, but we have to spearhead it, right? Lead by example through transitions.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an either or in my mind.
Yeah, and we're kind of dealing with that now, or we're starting to, or you are, with our church is looking to tear down an old part of the building, build a new one. We have a building committee,
right?
And we're getting some feedback already from people that are excited about the opportunity and being a resource and building a community center for the town, as part of our building. And the other aspect of it is, well, I don't want you to change this. I like these pews. I like this here. I like that there. And we're getting kind of all sorts of different responses once we, heard that this was going to happen or not.
Yeah. No, exactly. So, Bill, talk to us about the kind of what we perceive, you and I kind of perceive as the number one challenge when it comes to change.
Yeah. So, one of the first responses when we hear change for a lot of people is fear or apprehension or anxiety or concern. And anxiety is not I don't want to describe it. I'm reading the book called The Anxious Generation right now, and he talks about anxiety being directly related to the unknown, right? Fear of the unknown, right? There's a fear of kind of a defensive mode where, I'm on safari and there's a lion and I'm apprehension, I'm fearful that I may come charging the vehicle or whatever, right? But versus is, I'm going to walk out my door and I have no idea what's going to happen today, what's going to happen. So it's a little different context, right? So, and that's what change brings about is the unknown. What is about to happen? What am I going to have to let go of? What am I going to have to adopt to? How is this going to change my routine, my life, my decision making, and all of that? So, and there are some common fears, different types of fears that arise or anxieties that arise as a result of a change. So, and it could be a fear of failure.
Ooh, yeah.
Right? Not being able to keep up, navigate, do what's the new expectations for us in that change. There's, again, that's that anxiety piece of just the unknown, right? I don't know what's going to happen. What was happening before is a known quantity for me. I want to be the hobbit. That's me. That's my default response.
It's comfortable.
I want to be the hobbit and stay in my shire and just kind of navigate and keep everything the same. I have the same thing for breakfast 90% of the time.
Yeah.
Rejection. Whoa, what if I fail and I get rejected, kicked, dismissed, moved out of the group, of the department, dismissed, promoted to customer?
I don't get the customer.
The polite way of being fired, I guess, is promoting the customer. What if I disappoint someone? That's another kind of concern that arises when these changes come about. Am I able to do this? What if I can't? I'm going to disappoint someone I really look up to, or have some power, authority, a figure, a boss, or a mentor, or what have you. Regrets can come up. Am I adequate? Do I have what it takes? Or do I feel inadequate? There's another type of fear that can come up. And for some, and I'm guilty of this, is success, a fear of success. Increased responsibilities, more things to manage and handle, greater workload, different dynamics. That's one of the concerns I expressed to Jared when we started this podcast. Like, that's not, my fear is not getting on camera, and my fear is not talking. My fear is, what if we're actually successful? What are we going to do about that? So that was one of my initial responses in starting our podcast. So we got another quote here for you from the book Atomic Habits. If you haven't read it and you like to read books, I highly recommend Atomic Habits. James Clear, the author, he says, it's hard to change your habits if you never change the underlying beliefs that led to your past behavior. You have a new goal and a new plan, but you haven't changed who you are. It can be a roadblock.
Massive roadblock.
To navigating change when it comes about.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, sometimes we don't have a choice. Change is coming.
Exactly. Yeah. And so let's jump into this, Bill. We want to kind of explore the different types of responses to change, if you will, our people.
Yep.
Kind of their attitudes. And we've pulled some stuff. This is both positive and negative. But we pulled some stuff from the company Noble. If you know anything about them, they're a company that helps Fortune 500 companies navigate change. So they're very reputable. And we just grabbed a few things from there, and then Bill and I will go into kind of our own thoughts as well. But we found this to be kind of pretty positive and helpful when thinking about the aspect of change.
Yeah. And practical too. These are kind of 4 different types of people or ways that people will respond to a change that takes place in an organization.
So Noble gives the first one co-pilots, right? Which, I mean, obviously it's kind of a self-explanatory. They're going to be like your first collaborators to help you shape and move forward with change.
Yeah, they could be part of the planning stage. They might have been involved with the change and how it was going to be, the guidelines to it, and they're going to be the ones that kind of just
influence others as well.
Influence others,
right.
Be collaborators.
Yes, yeah.
As you go through and navigate and bring the organization through the change.
Yeah. So you're gonna have co-pilots, and maybe you're a co-pilot.
Have you ever been a collaborator when that's going to be a good change? I like that. Let's do that. And I want to be a part of that and plan that.
Plug yourself in.
Yourself in.
The other one is, or the next one that they give is champions, which obviously, they're going to be the ones, inspired by the possibility, of change. Yeah. They may already have a bunch of ideas and thoughts. They're going to be delivering probably resources, and they're going to be able to kind of rally the troops, is kind of, paraphrasing what Noble brings to the table as far as their idea of a champion.
And you're going to find they're out having conversations already, sharing their excitement about the change coming up. And you'll start getting sec from other people about, oh yeah, so-and-so said this, and they were excited about it, but I don't know if I'm that excited about it. You're going to start hearing, and you'll clearly identify who those champions, they're going to be your cheerleaders, your champions. So they'll stand out. So that's another category. You got your co-pilots or your champions, or 2 different ways people can respond. And now we get into a little kind of a questionable area, is just the fence sitters. Ooh, I don't know.
They're not sure. They're not sure.
Yeah, they're going to wait and see how things land, right? They're not going to invest. They're not going to commit. They're just going to kind of wait and see, right? And at times I've been guilty as charged.
Well, it says right in here, Noble gives this this little statistic that this group accounts for like 70% of your organization.
Yeah,
are going to be fence sitters.
Yeah,
which is kind of, that's a high number in my mind.
It is.
But I mean,
in thinking in terms of our building plan, right? We got to keep that in mind. Is 70% of the people are going to be wait and see how this turns out, and then I'll vote yay or nay,
or I'll buy in 3/4 of the way through or something. Yeah. So, and then the next one is skeptics, which I feel is kind of obviously self-explanatory, but Noble says they actively oppose change, and that's
bad idea. This isn't going to work. I doubt it. No way. I don't see the light at the end of this tunnel.
Right. Yeah. Skeptics all the way, kind of through and through. Yeah. So again, you've got your co-pilots. You're going to have your champions. You're going to have your fence sitters. You're going to have your skeptics. So the question then becomes, how to proceed. Obviously, I mean, what do you do with these 4 groups of people?
Yeah.
Kind of continue on with a few thoughts from Noble, but
Yeah, they had some really good best practices, general guidelines of how to respond to each of these groups. We don't want to forget about the co-pilots, right? We want to make sure they stay involved, are involved early and often.
Right.
That change can feel like a slog, and they can be a resource to help motivate and move the change through that 70% that's kind of fence sitting.
Right.
And you'll start seeing people adopting more and more as you in leveraging those co-pilots to help navigate that through is going to be very helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
And what about champions? I mean, what do you? I mean, because obviously you just summed it up really well. Noble gives the idea of you're going to be showering your co-pilots with resources and attention.
Yeah.
Right. You're going to give them those resources, give them that attention, let them go, let them run.
But to use the champions constructively, intentionally, you want to kind of delegate them some responsibility, some projects. So you don't want to. It's great that they're going to be talking it up and they're excited about it, but to help navigate the change, help to be intentional around it, is give them a specific responsibility.
You got to get them involved.
Hey, get a group of them together and say, hey, can you go? You 6 are going to go around to all the different departments, attend the departmental staff meetings, and talk about what you see the positives are in regards to the changes coming up, right? Or something along those lines where they're engaged, right, and they're active.
Yeah, so you've got kind of showering those co-pilots with those resources they're going to need. You've got get the champions involved, delegate, be specific. Then you've got the fence sitters, and I love how they say this. It says leave the fence sitters to others. Get some small wins on the board, and then let the champions and converted skeptics take care of the fence sitters. Which, I mean, it sounds like there's not much you're going to be doing there, but I think in retrospect, everything you're doing with your co-pilots and your champions is hopefully going to help those fence sitters, get influence enough to buy in. You're going to kind of grab them off that wall, that fence.
And to be honest, in my experience, the best way to influence fence sitters is through their peers, right? Using those champions for them. And as they start to see the benefits and the results and the need for the change, more and more of them will come off the fence and say, all right, I wasn't sure at first, but now I agree this is going to be a good thing. Yeah. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of fence sitters and skeptics as well. Don't be afraid of the skeptics.
Noble actually says listen to skeptics first, right? Yeah. But don't waste time trying to persuade them until you have concrete proof of change. And that's actually a really good approach, I think, because, again, skeptics, as they say here, they're going to have some pretty good knowledge of why some stuff has failed in the past. Whether it's through their own story, their own eyes, or whether it's through the same company or organization you're working with. So kind of listen to them, but don't necessarily let that pop and let the air out of your balloon. Yep. Right? It's more or less learning what you can from them, but then allowing the success of the change that you're implementing. Yeah. Be the ones that or be the catalyst to change their minds.
Yeah. I hope this framework gives you a little comfort in knowing what to expect and prepare yourself for it as you lead people through change. But sometimes we're the ones being led through the change, and we find ourselves falling into one of these categories. Mm-hmm. I hope in that case you're going, oh, I'm this person. I'm a fence sitter. Yeah. Or, no, I'm a
co-pilot.
I'm a co-pilot, champion, skeptic, or whatever it is. And allow the normal, healthy process to take place to navigate the change. And if it's a change that you feel is just so bad, there's options, right? You can sit down with the leaders, say, what's going on? I don't understand. I really doubt. Can you walk me through this? But you have to do that with an open mind. But if on the other extreme, and this is just not helpful, it's going to end in disaster. You can wait it out, or you can remove yourself from it. Still, right? Not ideal, but being prepared and having a little look around the corner of how people may respond, even yourself respond to change, can really help us settle those fears, the anxiety, and all right, this is where it is. I'm going to navigate through this. I'm going to deal with these, push through these emotions and deal with the change in front of me.
Yeah. So let's ask these questions here. We've got
Yeah.
just a couple. We're going to ask them of each other. You guys can listen in and
Yeah.
maybe think through yourself as we're talking. We want to kind of personalize this next bit of this episode here, because we think it'll help kind of flesh out this idea of change and navigating and how to navigate change. So, Bill, when have you experienced change and responded negatively?
Last week.
Last week?
Yeah, really.
Okay, so
Yeah.
care to share? Or is
Actually, yeah, I'll share as much as I can. It was more than the last week. It's probably a week and a half, 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And I can't get into details. But I will say one of the things I enjoy the most is mentoring others and shepherding others and identifying and helping young leaders, new leaders, grow and develop. Hence our podcast. That's why we're here.
Yeah, for sure.
So some responsibilities at work have changed where the ability for me to do that in my workplace is gone. I'm not able to do it anymore. And it was necessity. It was necessary, but at first I was not happy about it because that was my favorite thing of my out of my responsibilities that I have it in my workplace of doing just that. And we had this formal setting where I was identifying and developing leaders. And I did not respond well. I won't say I was a full-blown skeptic, but I would say I had 1 foot on the fence and 1 foot dangling over the skeptic side. But I also identified that's what I was doing. I was realizing, man, Bill, you got some emotions about this because it's hitting home. Give it time and trust the people that are in authority over you. And I do trust them. And it was a matter of taking ownership of my emotions and surrendering them to that trust I have for them. Because the leaders in my organization are leaders of quality. They really are. I am really blessed to work where I work with the people I work with, hands down, no question. And it was just kind of a personal sadness, depression that I wouldn't be able to do what I love doing. So I did not at first respond well. But eventually I got around to the point like, all right, these are our marching orders. Either I can sit here and continue to complain about this, or I can ask, what can I do to help to navigate this change? So within a week and a half, I changed my mindset and started being on board with the change. And the reality is, no matter where I go, no matter who I meet, I can always keep my eye open for a potential leader on one-on-one, just off, have conversations about growing as a leader, having influence on other people's lives and helping people realize you have influence, whether you realize it or not. And then you can be intentional about being a positive influence and increasing that influence in other people's lives. So it was a journey. It wasn't fun. It was like,
Yeah.
it sounds, I may coming across kind of comfortable and mature now about it, but I wasn't going through it. But I'm here now, and I navigated it.
So what about a time where you responded positively to change?
I took over a project a number of years ago for my work where it was we had a whole group of young managers who were just kind of new. And we wanted to be a resource, have this meeting of presenting best practices to help them get settled into their roles as leaders. And this was a department of, probably about 40, 45 leaders that were not tenured. And I'll use in this circumstance, tenured being 5 years or more of experience in that role. And there's still opportunity for growth for them and whatnot. So there was a manager a level above me running this organization and this project of having this monthly meeting of best practices with these managers, which I was part of her project team to organize, structure, and she said, your turn. You're taking over. Your turn. So, and what ended up happening is that continued on for a time, but then the leaders, they became tenured. They just didn't need it. And being able to identify when this project needed to end and doing it well is something I'm actually pretty proud of, because it it transitioned really smoothly. We went from, a group of leaders that weren't tenured to providing these resources, this information, internal business partners that they have opportunity to connect and work with, and how to work with them, to like, hey, these people got it. They don't need us anymore. Let's end this. And I've mentioned this in a previous episode. Leading a project or identifying, creating a project is like a lot like surfing, right? You want to find the wave. That's the biggest wave, going to have get the best ride out of it. But eventually all waves come to an end. But identifying when the wave is ending, it's a healthy thing. And helping people navigate off the wave, but navigate them to looking what's the next wave, right? That I need to be keeping an eye open for, and helping them get on their next wave for the next project. So projects have life cycles. They come and they go, and that's okay. Yeah. So it takes practice to identify when to end a project, a program, or a process, and go find a new one.
Yeah, and I think your two stories there, one negative, one positive, experience, reaction to change there, kind of answer these next questions. But I'm going to ask them of you guys who are listening, and Bill, if you want to kind of chime in and give us a couple quick answers. How did these changes and transitions shape our experiences and our growth journeys? In other words, what have we learned? I mean, for you, you kind of hinted at being okay with the process of those products and those systems sometimes need to change, coming to an end. You kind of learn that, put that tool in your toolbox of, hey, let me get off of this thing right before it ends, being prepared for the next one. Of that kind of. What else have you learned?
That's a very good question. I know the question was here, and I've been kind of chewing on it for a while, and it's hard to narrow down to just a few things, but to kind of
summarize
the totality of experience and things I've learned, it's an emotional intelligence. I think I'm a far greater, more emotional, intelligent, more mature individual because I went through these bumps, these hills, these valleys, these peaks, and recognized them for what they are. And there's no way to rush it. There's no way to, it's like often, it's like, oh, God, give me patience now. I want it now, right? It's not patient and ask in the way I'm asking, right?
He's going to give you opportunities to be patient.
And it's navigating it and navigating the emotions of it and the reactions and the results and deciding what to do as a result of it. And here's a prime example. And I'm going to give my example, and I'm going to turn the mic back on you.
Oh, sure.
My favorite book outside of the Bible's number one, Lord of the Rings. The three books, Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, and Return of the King. I've been reading them once a year since I was like 13 years old. And not thinking, this is not the movies, this is the books. So in the books, you have the hobbits. They start out very similar, simple life, really never left the Shire, and they end up going on this adventure, right? Mm-hmm. If you know the movies, you get an idea of what the type of adventure they go on. And what's different between the movies and the book, in the book, the ending is different. In the book, Saruman doesn't die when he dies in the movies. He dies way back when the hobbits return to the Shire. And he has kind of had these half men, half goblins kind of come in and take over the Shire, chopping down trees and building houses instead of houses in the hills like the hobbits like. And here come the four hobbits home and realize what's being done. And they kind of realize, we got this. We can do this. Let's raise the hobbits. We'll kick these people out. And the only reason they're capable of doing that is because of all the experiences they had before. Mm-hmm. And allowing these experiences to navigate and have their impact on your life, good, bad, happy, sad, positive, negative, and allow them to grow you and look for the growth is what's going to make the difference on how you change down the road, right? Are you intentional about your growth? Are you just reacting? Do you react or do you respond to what's happening? And being able to have a consistent time over time, not perfectly, it's not about perfection, it's about progress, right? being able to respond better and better as you navigate these things more and more often, or more years behind you. You have more opportunity for that growth. It's going to yield a much more robust and, dare I say, even satisfying life. So.
Yeah, no, that's really good.
So let's turn these two questions back on you, Jared. When
Sure.
have you experienced change and responded negatively?
Aging. No, and I only say that because I think it's something that most of our listeners have gone through or will go through. You know, there's a song, I forget who the author is, but there's a line in it. It's a church song, but it says, when seasons change and stories end. And that always stuck out to me because that happens in life all the time. There's nobody listening to this podcast. There's nobody that you know, including yourself, that isn't going to experience that change in life that just happens to you. And so for me, I respond, still learning how to not respond negatively to just those seasons of life coming to an end. You know, anything from like my kids are now, one in high school and one in middle school. So like thinking through, like just I don't like that. I don't want the season of like the childhood to go away. So you get, and then you let it affect like your attitude. And of course, this is all emotions, right? It's nothing more than just emotions, and learning how to navigate, your emotions. And so I find myself, telling other parents, just enjoy every season because they go by so quickly. But there really is a personal, emotional response to personal change that if we don't learn how to navigate, you're going to be in a perpetual state of negativity.
Yeah.
And so I think, learning how to enjoy the everyday is going to be really important. And having that attitude when you wake up, to go into work or to be a dad or to be a father, for me, it's just this whole perspective change of I get to be doing this today at this specific time with these specific people. And obviously with my experience with what I do in ministry, we see ministries and systems and, and things changing all the time.
We do.
And so that's kind of one of those. I mean, I remember when I went from when I took this position, was it like 5 or 6 years ago now?
Yeah.
That was a huge change, and there was both negative and positive things that I experienced through that change as well.
Yeah.
But I would say, definitely the responding negatively is for me was more of an attitude. You mentioned kind of the I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. As stories change and seasons end. So that for me, I realized I don't want to be a Debbie Downer or a pessimist, right? Because I let those things change. Turning 40, whatever, your midlife crisis. I'm going to be 41 this coming March, but I remember just going out of my 30s and being reluctant, and then attitudes, and it sounds so petty, but at the same time, those attitudes can affect everything else you do. So that for me is probably the negative. Then positive, I would actually say, is the exact same thing, because I remember coming here, I responded positively to many aspects of being here at this ministry, right? There was a lot of negative that I didn't like, but there was also a lot of positive in my mind. So I reacted negatively, and I remember you walking me through some of those changes.
We talked about
some of my job description changed, and I was reluctant with part of it, but responded positively with some of it. So I just remember this mixed bag. But the things that I responded negatively to, I think it hindered my growth. My growth could have been faster in retrospect. If I had learned to let go of some of those things and embrace that change a little more maturely, I probably would have grown a little more quickly. If that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense.
That's kind of how I would answer that question. Then obviously that answers, what I learned through that.
Yeah. I had similar reactions. I'm older. I'm not 40 or 41. I remember turning 50 and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm 50 now. And, and I had all these people from our church who were in their 70s, 80s go, oh, you're young. You're young.
Yeah.
And I said, excuse me, it's the first time I turned 50. Please let it be a big deal for me, okay?
I'm old.
No. But now I'm not 50 anymore. I'm older than that. I'm 57.
Yeah.
So in a couple of years, the 6-0 is coming up. So I get that quite a bit. Yeah.
Anyway. But James Clear, he has another quote from that book you mentioned, Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
And I'll read the quote, I'll let Bill explain it. But he said, when you fall in love with the process rather than the product, you don't have to wait to give yourself permission to be happy. You can be satisfied anytime your system is running. And a system can be successful in many different forms, not just the one you first envision.
This reminds me of our favorite leader,
Yeah.
John Maxwell, where he talks about it's better to be growth-minded than goal-minded. If you're set out to have these specific goals in mind and you don't achieve them, what kind of satisfaction does that bring? What if your goal is to sell 50,000 widgets and you sell only 45,000? Does that mean you failed? No, you sold 45,000, which was more than last year.
Right.
So that's growth. So if we look at setting growth as the goal, right, that process, that frees us up to enjoy and be a little more satisfied with what's happening around us and happening to us. But the key is intentional, being intentional. There's a great book, another one I'm going to recommend quick. Atomic Habits is the one that quote just came from, and another one's called Intentional Living by John Maxwell. Really good book. If you feel you just need to practice being a little more intentional about how you live, I'd encourage you to read Intentional Living by John Maxwell.
Yeah, I think there's one other, before we kind of wrap up here with the conclusion, there's another example I have of change. Right here in our hometown, Bill and I's hometown, there's a camp. Used to be a camp under a different name, and it has recently been acquisitioned by another like-minded camp. Yep. And I know the directors personally, the director and his wife, just wonderful, wonderful people doing an amazing work there. Yes. Personal friends of mine. And I was just having a conversation with her. Yeah, exactly. Send you the check, right? But I was just having a conversation with the director's wife, again, one of my good friends involved here at our local church as well. And we were talking about some of the changes that took place when they bought out the camp. And I grew up at this camp. So before it changed and was bought out, I grew up working there. I still go up and volunteer. There's just so many good memories for me personally. So we were having this conversation, and she mentioned that one or two of the aspects of their or procedures from their home base, they obviously brought with them to this camp, and they found that one of their systems really wasn't working that well. It was a people-related system, right. And she was explaining how they had to change that. And what it was in as it pertains to volunteers. They had a certain system for volunteers and how they would use them, and it worked really super well for their other location. But here they begin to realize that the camp that they bought out had a massive amount of people who grew up here. They want to volunteer. They want to be here, but they couldn't quite do it through the system that they had in place. So they had to learn to tweak it. And once they did, they realized the benefits from that. And so they grew from that, which was just a super neat thing to be a part of and to see. Yeah. I have some personal friends and family who went through that process with them, and everybody kind of grew through it, including me. Yeah. But that's just another example of don't bring reluctance, right? Yeah. That won't help you. But so let's kind of wrap this up. We want to kind of conclude with a couple of thoughts and then just a couple of extra little helpful tips, and then we'll be done. But
yeah, I'll just say, don't see change as the enemy. See it as the opportunity in making growth the goal versus the goal, so to speak. Yeah. That's where it's going to transform your perspective. It's going to bring a little bit more of that happiness into your life. So yeah, there's great importance to recognizing and embracing change as a crucial part of that personal growth, having the growth mindset rather than the goal mindset.
For sure.
And the benefit of change for an organization, the benefit for change is it breeds momentum. So you may find that this change comes in, you navigate it, those 70% fence sitters become bought in, right? And you see how successful that was. That brings an energy to another change, right? So if you navigate change well for your organization, or you help your organization navigate the change by learning to navigate change maturely ourselves, it can bring about greater change and greater benefit for the organization, for the people, and the people it influences.
So you're harnessing change to move from the status quo to greater growth.
Absolutely. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Most people have uphill dreams, but downhill habits. You have to intentionally turn downhill sliding into uphill climbing. That's John Maxwell, our favorite author. So it's about being intentional about growth.
Yeah, and just a call to action. There's
You have a saying.
I have a saying that I've taught over the years to many students and folks is choices, habits, lifestyle, character. And I can't remember where I heard this. I think it was from a book years ago. So shout out to whoever knows who this is, who came up with this. But I learned it as a teenager, and I implemented it into my own life, or tried to at least. And I've taught it, created my own material around this idea. But choices, when we repeat them, create habits. And then those habits, when you feed them with those repetitive choices, becomes a lifestyle. And when you live a lifestyle long enough, it literally becomes your character and who you are. So CHLC, choices, habits, lifestyle, character. So if you want to learn to really navigate change and navigate it well, and James Clear has the book Atomic Habits, really dive into, do a little bit of soul searching, a little bit of habit forming in your life to make choices repeatedly that are going to create habits that are healthy for navigating change. Let that become part of who you are, and I think you'll rub off onto others a little quickly and more effectively as well as a result of that hard work. So call to action to do some networking. I mean, share your experiences with this with other people, and obviously
and your failures, your wins and failures,
your wins and your losses, and what you've learned over the seasons of your journey. If you're new to this, keep reading about change and dissecting it a little bit. Maybe even grab a book or some. Or drop a comment. Maybe we can get some resources to you that are more specific to what you're actually going through in your change in your organization. If this is too broad and there's some other resources we can get to you, we'd love to help in that way.
Absolutely.
But share your experiences. Change is easier accomplished together. Leadership is a team sport. You've heard us say that. Network leading versus solo leading is so important, especially when it comes to change. So do some networking. And just three helpful tips. I'll say them. I'll let Bill kind of walk you through them real quick here. Be patient, be direct, and be intentional.
Yeah, being patient. Change doesn't happen in a day. Transitions don't happen in a day. So give yourself permission to wait a bit and navigate and see how it goes and practice navigating.
Right.
When you're navigating others through change, be direct. Specifics are important when implementing a transition.
Absolutely.
Making sure you're communicating those specifics. And be intentional. Kind of indifference is the enemy of intentionality. And just being indifferent about the change can be very harmful if you're leading to the change and you're indifferent about it yourself. And maybe, number 4, real quick, not in our notes, but is start with why. Why is this change important? Starting with a why, communicate the why first, and then tell them the change that needs to happen after you've communicated why. That's going to get you more of a buy-in sooner and help you be more intentional of navigating that change and not being indifferent about it. So, change brings momentum.
Good stuff. Yeah. We so appreciate you listening and tuning in. And again, drop us a comment. If you want to do us the favor of sharing, and subscribing, that would be awesome as well.
That would help us out. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time today. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.
We'll see you next time.
Take care.